Hi, darlings. I'm Fual Samani, and you're listening to Cup of Perspective. This podcast is for those who are keen on improving themselves and where I share meaningful, unprofessional advice, as well as sharing my honest perspective on all aspects of life. Before we begin, I am pleased to announce that this will be my very first episode launched, but let me introduce myself briefly so you can get a bit of an idea who I am. I am 17 years old. I'm currently in my first year of studying business in uni. Now, that might be a bit early. I actually graduated a year early. Okay, that's besides the point. My family moved to the UK when I was a year and a half, and we actually lived there for a little over 12 years, or about 13 years, I'm pretty sure 12. Then we moved back to my home country, which is Saudi Arabia. I am an avid Harry Potter fan through and through. I adore cats, and I actually have five myself. I love scrolling endlessly through Pinterest, and I have a deep affection to fashion and the business world. Okay, so now we've got that little segment out of the way. You may be wondering on how I came up with the name of my podcast. I wanted something that spoke to me and that was related to what this podcast has to offer. So after many countless days trying to think of a name, I remembered my love for tea, which is where cuppa came into the mix. And cuppa, or a cuppa, is a shortened British term to describe a cup of tea. And the main idea of this podcast is to share my perspective of the topics that you are interested in, which is how the name came into place. I feel as though I need to do a breathing exercise after all of that. I think I'm going to take a little tea intermission. I'll be right back. Tea intermission done. Okay, so as you know from the title, in this episode I will be discussing boundaries, whether that's in friendships, relations, and etc., and how you can set them. So let's dive right in. First, I'm going to give a short definition on what the word boundary means. According to dictionary.com, a boundary means a line or limit where one thing ends and another begins, or something that indicates such a line or limit. Are you someone who for some reason finds it difficult or possibly even scared to draw the line with people whenever they have done you wrong? Or maybe you're someone who clearly wants to set a boundary but is unsure of how to. Looking back at how I was 5, 4, 3 years ago, I had no idea what boundaries were. I was constantly letting others walk all over me, taking my kindness for granted, and allowing people to cross the line in terms of how they treat me. I was unhappy, confused at most times, asking, why am I treated this way when I am so nice to others? Well, that's just it. I was too nice. I let people take advantage of that, whether that will be them using me as a punching bag whenever they were upset. And I couldn't see that. I would constantly mutter, it's fine, even when it wasn't. I let people who hurt me constantly come back into my life because I believe that people should deserve second chances. However, little did I know, it was the third, fourth, fifth chances I gave to people that was doing all the damage. I didn't set boundaries whenever I got hurt. I just kept forgiving and moving on. The problem is, inevitably, I wasn't seeing changes in behaviour with those same people. They just continued to treat me as such, as if it were nothing. Because I didn't give them that warning. I didn't stop them at any sign of disrespect. So naturally, how could have they known? Not to mention, they were narcissists. So even if they did know, deep down, that what they did was wrong, they want you to mention it. They want you to bring it up. Otherwise, they're just going to continue. Also, narcissists are known to deny whatever they're doing, even if what they're doing is clear and evident, they're just going to ignore it and deny it all they want, because that's how they act. Now, the big question, how did I overcome this? I remember being so fed up of constantly being everybody else's backbone all the time. I was tired of forgiving toxic people and my energy being drained with their endless pointless arguments and disrespect. Then the day came where all that came to an end. A life of a weak girl who didn't realize her power finally regained her power. I remember having it out with those people, stating how I didn't appreciate their mistreatment to me, and how what they did was completely unacceptable, and that I would not continue to be friends with them after all the hurt they put me through. They were shocked. They didn't think a girl like me actually could have the strength and the power to answer and speak up to them. Because I was silent all the time, they never expected I could be a person who could switch onto beast mode just like that. At first, they switched the situation onto me and blamed me for being too sensitive. Like, what even is that anyway? And I knew that this was their way of hiding away from facing the facts. Then later, slowly but surely with time, they started to respect me more. All things that happened in the past never occurred to me again because I did not allow it. I drifted away from them as I realized that these weren't people worth having in my life, nor were they my true friends. So that ship sailed. Now, 4 years later, I haven't had a toxic friend since, nor did I let it happen. You see, when you're silent and let people do whatever they please to you, you are less respected. But when you stand to your beliefs and morals and you're firm with it, people may not like you, people might change how they act towards you, but they'll 100% respect you. Because the difference is that you respect yourself first, and it shows to other people. This episode is not only for people who want to set boundaries, but also people who deal with facing a boundary being set. And what I always like to tell people is that it's really nothing personal. It has nothing to do with you directly as a person, but rather the situation that has happened. Let me give you an example. There was a time when I was dealing with a person where it got to a point where that person crossed the line, and I was fed up and constantly tired of putting up a facade and basically just letting her say what she wanted and me full on dismissing it, or not making it apparent that I didn't like how she would constantly bring up this certain situation that, keep in mind, was none of her business and nothing that she had to worry about. But she kept on putting her whole energy on this thing, and to summarize, basically, crossing the line, until I had enough and I actually confronted her and spoke with her how I was grateful she cared so much about this thing, but she actually went overboard, and I told her basically not to bring this topic up again, as it was something that was very personal to me and had nothing to do with her. And what happened, at first, the person got very defensive and disrespectful and completely dismissing her part and switching it onto me after I set that boundary. But I was really firm about it, and I set that boundary. Then later on, a few months later, she never brought the topic up again. So you see, it's really nothing personal. And if your friend has a certain boundary, respect it. It doesn't mean you're a horrible person. It just means that the other person is uncomfortable with something and they're making it apparent with you, which is a good thing. Be that type of friend that brings comfort to the other person. Let that person come to you with ease instead of worrying how you'll react. And also, if you're the person who's setting the boundary and you get faced with someone who acts extremely irrational to you after that boundary has been set and continuing to disrespect you and crossing the line, you shouldn't be friends with them anyway if they're acting like that. Setting boundaries is what will bring you healthy, long-lasting relationships. Say no. It's okay if you do, but be confident and assertive in saying it so they know it's true. Or like how they always say, fake it till you make it. which I feel would be really helpful if you applied this saying to it. What are you scared of? Seriously, don't you have rights as well? About things that are personal to you, especially. Don't worry. Do it, and every step becomes a little easier, I promise. And the real question is, would you like loyal, respectful, satisfactory relationships? If so, adapt these little habits, and I promise you, you'll feel much more free and at peace. If I've come along all this way to even create this podcast and this episode and share my experiences, what's stopping you? Now, to summarize this episode, we shared my experience and what healthy boundaries should look like, which are 1. Valuing your own opinion. Your opinion is just important as anybody else's. Don't lower your value or your opinion just because the other person doesn't agree. At the end of the day, it's your opinion, and if it's valid, it's valid. No one can argue. 2. Respecting limits set by you or the other person. If that other person has come to you knowingly that this might actually save your relationship, or they're feeling uncomfortable by a certain thing and they're coming to you so that boundary can be set so they can continue on to have a healthy relationship with you, respect it. Now, there's certain limits that are too overboard, but I'm talking about the ones that I listed before. Also, if the other person has set a limit onto you, or you're the one that's setting a limit, respect your limits as well. They're there for a reason. You've put these limits for a reason. If you didn't want this friendship to continue or this relationship to continue, you would not put limits. 3. Not compromising own values for someone else. If you have high affirmative values and morals, there is no room for compromisation. None. None whatsoever. You don't need to compromise, or you don't need to discuss or further explain your morals to someone else, or you don't need to sort of maybe lower your morals and your views and your beliefs for someone else so that they can feel more comfortable. No, be firm in your morals if you want to be respected. 4. Effectively communicating needs and wants. Now, how do you communicate with the person effectively? You're not going to go up to the person that has disrespected you, or maybe that has crossed the line, because they might have not known it. It's not always necessary, or it's not always that person is like a narcissist or someone who wants to do this. Some people just don't have any self-awareness. So by going to them calmly and communicating with them and sharing with them what you want and what you need for this friendship or relationship to continue on, speak with them nicely, speak with them calmly. If you want someone to listen to you, don't scream. It's harder for someone to understand when you're ballistic. 5. Accepting no from others. If the other person has told you no, or didn't like a certain thing and made it apparent to you that they don't want to do a certain thing, or that maybe they're not agreeing, or maybe they don't want to go to this party, they don't want to go to this gathering, they don't want to go to whatever, accept it. They have the right to tell you no. And don't start acting sensitive, and don't start, taking it personal, because it's nothing personal at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that person just genuinely doesn't want to do this. genuinely doesn't like this sort of thing, genuinely doesn't want to go to this sort of place. It's nothing personal, guys. Please keep that in mind. 6. Being able to say no. If you don't like something for whatever reason, say no. It's not hard. It's a 2-letter word, guys. Why is it that you're scared to say no? Who is that person that is in front of you that you're genuinely scared of? And people genuinely get scared of saying no to their friends. How are they your friends if you're scared? Also, most of the times, that person doesn't care if you say no. They're not going to say anything if you say no. You know, most likely they're just gonna respect it. Maybe they'll ask, oh, why? But at the end of the day, they're gonna accept it. So just say no. It's really not hard, guys. You're just creating this sort of image or the situation, or you're just creating the fear. And I'd like to bring a quote from a Harry Potter a film that Hermione Granger said. Being scared of the word itself makes you scared of the thing. I think I misquoted it, but it's like under the lines of being scared of the name brings only fear onto the thing itself, I'm pretty sure. And I feel like this 100% applies, because being scared of the word no brings fear onto what happens after that. Just have no fear. I know it's easy to say, but I promise you, if I was a person that genuinely let people walk all over me, now I will never let people even walk an inch, not even step, not even jumping over me, not even hurdling, nothing like that. Then you can too. 7. Being able to identify when a boundary has been broken. If you have been firm and you've set a boundary with a type of person, and that boundary has been broken in any way, whether that person continued to do that sort of thing even after you've addressed that you were uncomfortable with a certain thing, and they have completely dismissed it and broken that boundary, you need to identify when that happens. You need to be able to clearly see and clearly, try to sort out the situation, or sort out whenever a boundary has been broken, whether that has been talking with the person, addressing them that you have disrespected my boundaries, which I have clearly set with you. And if that person has continuously broken that boundary, just don't be friends with them. You don't want friends who don't take your word. You don't want friends to not take you seriously. You want friends to actually respect you, do you not? Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this episode. Okay. We have reached the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Comments will be open, and I'll be looking forward to your reviews, notes, or questions, or maybe recommendations for my new episode. New episodes will come out every Tuesday. Check out my Instagram and TikTok, as well as YouTube, which I will be posting episodes on as well. See you next week. Bye!